Hi, I'm Barb Demorest, and I'm the founder of KnittedKnockers.org in the United States. And we're here today to film the long-awaited tutorial for how to make a knitted knocker. The pattern we're using today is a pattern that can be found on our website, www.knittedknockers.org. And this pattern makes a knocker that I have personally worn for over 3 years, so I know it works great. And it was developed by my friend Phyllis, who made my very first knocker and has made over 200 of them since. She is here with me today, and she's going to show us how to make these knockers. The yarn that we are using today is Cascade Yarn's Ultra Pima yarn, and it is 100% cotton. Though any acrylic, polyester, cotton works okay, we just try to stay away from the wools because of washability and allergies that can be out there and itchiness. And so the weight of yarn that we use is DK or sport weight, baby weight, 3-weight yarn. So with that said, I'm going to turn you over to the most expert knitter I know, Phyllis. So Phyllis, show us how this is done.
Thanks, Barb. So we're going to divide this into 3 sections. The first part will be the cast on, and just to get you into the start of the knocker. Section 2 will be where we start the decreases, and section 3 will be the finishing. So I am going to assume that everybody watching this basically knows how to knit. We're not going to teach you the basic knit stitch, but anything else that you have to learn I will show you. So we start with a long tail cast on, and you want to leave about 6 inches. You'll need this to sew down the nipple later. So I'm going to cast on 3 stitches. Now we're going to do an I-cord for 6 rows, and an I-cord is, you see I'm on a double pointed needle, so I've cast on 3, I'm sliding it over to the right, and I'm going to knit those 3 stitches. Then after those 3 stitches are knit, they're back on the right needle. I'm going to transfer that needle, slide it over to the right, and I'm going to knit them again. So it's like we're creating a tube. If you remember the old spool knitting that some of you may have done as a child, it's going to come out and look just like spool knitting. So we're going to do 6 rows of this I-cord. So I'm on row number 3 right now.
And you're going to pull that yarn tight,
yes,
right?
I'm going to pull it tight. So see, I'm sliding it to the right.
So instead of turning your needle, you're actually just keeping it the same direction and sliding it to the other end and then pulling it tight.
You just slide it over. Keep the needle there. Just slide it over.
Now the reason we're only doing 6 rows is so that that nipple will be small. We don't have a whole lot to tie down at the end.
Exactly, and we don't want it any bigger than that.
Yeah.
Like Barb will say that that's kind of been a complaint sometimes. Some of these come through with nipples that are too big, and we have found that 6 rows is perfect. Anything less you can't really tie down, you can't knot on itself, and anything more just gets too big to be.
With that said, though, we can make them without nipples at all. And the way you would do that is you would just cast on your 6 stitches, and then you would start right where we're starting right now. You just don't do the I-cord.
Exactly.
And that's certainly acceptable. A lot of people prefer those. So if you're having difficulty with the I-cord or having difficulty making a small enough nipple, that's certainly a great alternative. And at the end, I'll show you on the finishing what one of those looks like.
Okay. So now I've done my 6 rows. So now what I'm going to do, I want to increase to 6 stitches. So again, staying in the, I'm going to call it the I-cord mode, I'm going to knit into the front and the back of each stitch on this needle. So there, I've knit into the front and the back of stitch number 1, the front and the back of stitch number 2, and the front and the back of stitch number 3. And here's where the fun starts. And those of you who are afraid of double pointed needles, you may have a few times where they start falling off or you get twisted, but don't be discouraged. You'll get the knack of it. So I'm putting 2 stitches on each of 3 needles. And here's where the potential of twisting could occur, occasionally does occur, but you're not that far into it, you could start over. So I've got the 6 stitches here, and I can tell by looking at it that they're not twisted. Okay, so I'm starting my first round in a circle.
And what I've done is I've actually laid it down in my lap and left the needles in my lap in the circle so that I can tell that I haven't twisted. And I knit that, it's awkward, but it works. Knit that in my lap around in the circle for the first row or two.
That's smart. So now on this first round, so I've got 2 stitches on each needle. So my first round after that, I am again going to knit into the front and the back of the first stitch, because we're going to increase 1 stitch every row on these knockers.
Now, one thing that I think is important to know is that nipple should be facing you. It should not be away.
Yeah,
so that it's on the right side, because that can be confusing when you're making your circle. Is that I-cord on the bottom or on the top? It should be the closest to you.
It should be, see, hanging down there. So now I'm knitting into the front and the back of the first stitch on each needle. The second stitch on each needle, I'm just knitting plain.
And our pattern tells us that.
And our pattern tells us this.
Knit in the front and back of the first stitch and just knit the second.
But starting with the next round, we're going to do a slightly different increase. So we're going to knit until there's 1 stitch left on the needle, and then we're going to do an increase that's called make 1. And to do that make 1, you're going to take the tip of your left hand needle and put it in that strand between the last 2 stitches, and then knit into the back of that stitch. And that's a make 1. So now I have 4 stitches on needle number 1. Okay, so let me show you the make 1 again on the second needle. So we're going to knit till there's only 1 stitch on the left hand needle. We're going to take that tip of that left hand needle, put it in that strand between the last 2 stitches, and knit into the back of that stitch. Then knit that last stitch.
Why are we doing a make 1 now, Phyllis, instead of a knit in front and back increase?
I'm going to call it a smoother increase. The knit into the front and back can often create a bump, whereas the make 1 doesn't. So it's a smoother increase, and it just makes for a smoother look on the knocker.
So it's got a nice slant to it then too. The slant is the right direction.
Exactly.
It's very pretty.
So now we're going to continue on every needle, knitting till there's 1 stitch left, and then doing a make 1. Whoops, sorry, got a little stuck there. Then doing a make 1, knit the last stitch, and we're going to just keep doing this until the knocker gets to be as big as you want it. And Barb, why don't you talk a little bit about sizing, and actually, talk a little bit about the sizing. I'm going to keep knitting on this.
Okay. The pattern has the number of stitches for recommended sizes. If you want A cup, B, C, D, double D, whatever. But those are just recommended because, as we all know, some of us knit looser or tighter than each other. And so there's also on our pattern a recommended measurement for the diameter to determine the size of the knocker that you've completed. I have a knocker here. I don't know if you're able to see it at this point, but we can show it in the finishing as well. But a measurement would be a diameter from one point straight across to the bottom of the knocker. And I would say don't stress too much about the sizing. I mean, it's all pretty much estimation anyway. We prefer to have pairs of knockers made, and so if you just make sure that you've got the same number of stitches on both knockers, then we can pretty much determine by looking at them whether they're an A, B, C, D, or whatever. We'll talk more about that later, though, about pairs as versus individual ones. So that's what I've got there. How are you doing?
Okay, well, I think this is the end of section 1. You just, like I said, you keep knitting around, doing your make one before the last stitch on each needle, and you keep going until it's the size you want.